Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Elixir Kitchen Community Connections. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Jeremy Capone. I'm the wellness chef for the Cancer Rehab and Survivorship Program at the Princess Margaret Cancer Center. And we have another super exciting class for you today. Joined as always, I want to introduce you to our amazing registered dietitian, Daniela Fiorini. Hello, Daniela.
Hi, Jeremy. How are you doing over there?
Very good. Ready to cook.
Well, since April is Cancer Awareness Month, we thought we would focus on cancer prevention guidelines from a nutrition perspective. In January and February, we dealt more with January, February, and March. We talked more about some symptoms you may experience if you had cancer, but right now we want to focus on the guidelines and for prevention. And our go-tos for that are the American Institute for Cancer Research, which I affectionately call ACR, and the World Cancer Research Fund. They are the originators of the guidelines that we then adopt through Cancer Care Ontario, the Canadian Cancer Society, the American Cancer Society. And so our focus today is going to be on upping our fiber and whole grain intake, moving toward a more plant-based, plant-forward diet, and then a little bit more about phytonutrients and antioxidants and what that's all about. So the recipes Jeremy has created for us today, always magnificent. The first one is going to be a spring herb salad with pita. The second is butter beans and chard soup. And the third is a wonderful blueberry coconut red lentil pancakes. So for our first recipe, this fresh and beautiful salad is not only rich in flavor, but it's also rich in fiber. And research shows that fiber has many health protective benefits. So it can keep our bowels moving. So it's good if you have either diarrhea or constipation. It feeds the friendly bacteria in our intestine. And if that's not enough, fiber can help stabilize blood sugar. So that's good if you have trouble with blood sugars like type 1 or type 2 diabetes. And it's also can bind to cholesterol. So it's good for heart health. That's more of the soluble fiber. Cancer prevention guidelines actually tell us to have 25 grams per day for women, 38 grams per day for men. But in Canada, we seem to be measuring around 15 grams per day, so about 50%. So we can all do better at improving our fiber intake. And so the peas and beans used in this recipe, along with the whole grain pita, is going to get us closer to that goal. And with that, we'll just head over to the kitchen, see what Jeremy's up to.
Thank you, Daniela. Awesome introduction. Yes, so we're going to jump right into the first recipe. And it's spring, right? So that was sort of our inspiration for this, using some of the bright and fresh ingredients that, especially in Canada, depends on where you're tuning in from. You might have fresh produce all year round. We don't. So this is the exciting, very, very exciting time for us where we're starting to see a little bit more green, definitely, the trees budding, and in the grocery store, some more local produce, right? That is definitely, seasonal dependent. So things like peas and some of the fresh beans and dandelions and some of the greens that you love, you'll start to see, depending on where you are, you probably start to see it closer to end of April, May, depending on what it is. But definitely an opportunity to use some of those fresh, bright ingredients. And this is one of my favorite dishes that I like to prep a big batch of and keep it in the fridge, and then I'll just use it over the next few days in a few different dishes, a few different meals. So what I like to do is take any fresh herbs, and with this, we're using some parsley. I have some mint in there as well. You can throw in cilantro, you can throw in basil, any of those fresh leafy herbs would be fantastic. And we're going to give them a really, really nice chop. Now, usually when you buy herbs, they come in these big bunches. What do I you know, how I'm gonna use all this, I only need a couple tablespoons. Well, this is a nice way to just use it all up, and then you can, you know, if you need a couple tablespoons for a soup or, you know, whatever you need, you can use it throughout the few days, or you can even freeze it, and I'll show you how to do that as well for longer storage. So best way to do this is by knife. So taking your mint, and I have my parsley here, you know, washed really well and just wrapped it up with a little paper towel. And what you can do is with the mint, you're going to want to pick it off of the stem, because the stem is a little too big for this. With the parsley, I'm going to leave the stem in and just chop through the parsley. So what I'd like to do is try to keep it together in a bundle. That way it's easier to chop. And one way you can do this to make it a little bit easier is you have a little paper towel that's damp. Keep one end of that parsley bundle wrapped up tightly in that paper towel. So you have half of it exposed. And then that way it doesn't sort of keeps it nice and tight. So when you run through with your knife, so I'm taking my knife here, I'm going to go pretty fine on the stems because I don't want them to be too thick. And slowly retreating with my fingers, keeping them out of the way. By having this paper towel on, I'm able to get through most of that mound of parsley and get a really, really nice chop on it. Now, if you're not super comfortable, that's one way to do it. I find that with a knife, again, you get a nice cleaner cut, and you get less bruising of the herb. If you're not super comfortable with your knife, this is when we're going to lean on some of the equipment. Okay, so food processor. I know you've even seen like the food chopper. You know, probably all seen the infomercial for that. You can definitely use this. So I'm going to show you the rest of the way using that. Now, I still will, even with a pair of scissors, just chop it into like maybe 3 or 4 manageable mounds. It'll just make it a lot easier for your machine to pulse that down. And then we can go ahead and add that in. Now, the key here is, again, I don't want to run the motor of the food processor for too long. Because as that motor runs, it starts to heat up. And as it heats up, it'll start to discolor your fresh herbs. And you might get excess moisture coming out of it, which I don't want as well. So I just want to use the pulse function and just break it down. It doesn't have to be super fine, but just to a point where it's broken down and it's not discoloring because it's running too much. Okay, so any herbs you want in there, lid on, and just pulp it. Just to break it down. Now, this is a great way to make like a pesto. If I slowly start to add olive oil in here, I don't want a pesto for this. We're making more of a salad. Just be patient with it. Anything gets stuck, work it down. And I'm starting to see a little bit of moisture come out. So don't want to go too much more. Maybe a couple more pellets. And we're good to go. All right. So it still works, but if you feel comfortable using your knife, I prefer the outcome of chopping versus using the processor. And I'll show you the difference. It might be a little hard to see on the camera. You can see one is a little more glossy, glistening a little bit more in the food processor because the blades are a little bit thicker, and the way it's breaking it down, it's causing a little more friction. So you're getting a little bit more moisture come out of it, which is not, again, not the biggest deal in the world, but just to show you the difference there. Okay, so nice fresh parsley mint. I'm going to throw that into a bowl.
And the great thing about the parsley and the mint, we hear a lot about their antioxidant, anti-inflammatory properties. So, and it also adds that freshness, I think. And I know we're talking about cancer prevention guidelines, but if people are listening and they're going through treatment and have nausea, the smell of the herbs, especially the parsley and the mint, may be comforting and soothing.
Love that. Okay, and it smells really, really nice. Just what you were describing, Daniela. All right, so nice and loose. Lots of that mint, lots of that parsley. Again, you can put some of this aside if you want to save it for other recipes. If you want to save some of it, mix it with some oil, put it in the freezer. You can do that. To this, we're going to start to add some of those other wonderful, fresh spring ingredients. So, green onion or spring onion, sometimes you refer to as. These are great. You can get these all year long, but you'll probably start to see the springtime anyways around, in Ontario anyways, where we are, you'll start to see them at some of the farmers markets, some of the different fresh varieties. And I'm just going to roughly chop this, nothing too small. But when I'm going through the white part of the onion, I'll go a little finer. To these small pieces, and then when I get to this, the green part of the onion, I can go a little bit bigger, that like the big chunks, the big pieces. And we're gonna add all of that into a nice fresh bites here. Nice little tool to have on hand is this little bench scraper, so you can pick things up, put them in. All right, and then to this, any other spring produce that you would like to add. We're highlighting a few options here. So we have some green peas. I have some edamame, which are really nice. And we have some of these snap peas as well in here. Fava beans are great. Like anything that you want to add to provide a little more texture would be fantastic. But then Daniela, also we're getting some extra nutrition from these ingredients.
Definitely. Yeah. With all those three that you mentioned, you're getting an excellent source of fiber, which we're highlighting in this recipe. But we're also getting a good amount of plant protein. So both of those are wonderful additions. The edamame, right, is like a soybean, a green soybean, an immature soybean. So it actually boasts more folate and vitamin K than the mature soybean. There's a little interesting tidbit.
Love that tidbit. Fantastic edamame tidbit. So you didn't know what you were going to expect today. Class. Love these edamame tidbits. All right, so just added everything in and then just giving it a quick little mix. Definitely regretting this bowl size. Go with the biggest bowl. It's okay, we'll do a little more cleanup afterwards. And once it's nice and combined, I am good to go. So what I like to do with this, I'm making a big batch. We're gonna finish it with some yogurt and a pita, but I don't like to dress it at this point. Okay, so I would store it like this so it's nice and dry. And that way, over the next like 3 days, I would probably go max about 3 days, 4 days in the fridge. I can add this to different salads. I can add this to different soups, and then I would just dress it when I need it. Versus if I added the dressing now, especially if there's an acid in the dressing, it'll just start to break down a little bit quicker. So undressed, stored in the fridge, or what you could do as well is take a little bit of it, mix it in a bowl. Again, just the flavors, like just the aroma alone, so fresh. And then we can add some olive oil to this. And then I'll store this mixture in, you can use like ice cube trays, or one of our favorites, the little silicone muffin tins. And just give that a nice little mixture. And you have this almost like pistou, which is like a French pesto, right? Or This is a beautiful mix of the olive oil, and this will just freeze a lot better. And then you can add this to soups, you can add this to any like slow roasted dishes or roast chicken or something like that, some fish. It's wonderful, beautiful topping. So, putting in some of that prep work once, and now I'm setting myself up for future dishes. Okay, so put that to the side. We have our salad. We're gonna finish it off this dish with a nice little base of yogurt. We're using some Greek yogurt, some nice thick yogurt for this. A plain yogurt, but I guess you could use any yogurt. It just depends. Some have higher protein, I guess.
Any yogurt. I would probably, I like the choice of the Greek yogurt because that's adding some more protein to the dish. And we can all use some additional protein in the diet, it helps with building our muscle. Protein can also work with fiber to slow down our digestion, make us feel fuller, so we don't over consume calories if we're trying to manage our portion intake. What about skyr? Skyr an option for this too?
Absolutely, yeah. I love skyr. Yeah, the Icelandic yogurt, another high protein yogurt option.
Definitely, yeah. It's actually more protein than the Greek yogurt.
Yeah, so either will work. Just go for a plain one because we're gonna be adding, you don't wanna add garlic, which I'm mincing in now to like a strawberry yogurt or something like that. Might not work the best, so go with a plain, and then we're gonna impart our own flavor. So I grated in one clove of garlic, and then I'm gonna take my lemon, which I wash it really well, and I'm gonna take the zest off that lemon. And again, I know citrus really truly isn't seasoned during the winter, but that fresh lemon zest definitely reminds me of spring for sure. And I think it's just, again, a beautiful pairing with the herbs, with the peas, with the edamame there. And it's going to give us this really nice base, the yogurt. All right, so nice punch of lemon oil in there. We have the minced garlic, plain yogurt, lemon zest, and then do some of the juice as well. Maybe like a couple tablespoons. This is really to taste. If you like a little bit more of that acidity, a little more of that lemon flavor, go with a little bit more.
I like your technique in getting the seeds from the lemon.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's a good catch though. Through your thing, and then if you have trouble, either I guess if if you're dealing with any like neuropathy issues.
recipe number 2 is the butter bean and chard soup. Now, this delicious soup is rich in protein, making it a great meatless meal option as we move toward a plant-forward way of eating. And cancer prevention guidelines recommend that we cut back on red meat. So you don't have to eliminate it, just cut back. The recommendation is that we don't have more than 500 grams per week, but what does that look like? If you look at a deck of cards, that's about 100 grams. You can also think about the palm of your hand, that would be about 100 grams. So if we're saying 500 grams per week, that would be, you could have that size 5 times per week. So you could still have some red meat. But we also want to introduce more plant foods in the diet and more plant proteins. And so dried peas and beans and lentils is the best way. Well, I shouldn't say the best way, but it is one of the key ways to add plant protein to the diet, and protein we need for healing, tissue repair, and building muscle. And then the Swiss chart in this recipe ups our intake of green leafy vegetables. And these are your non-starchy vegetables. And that is what the cancer prevention guidelines recommend we increase. And they add several health protective compounds as well. Okay, off to the kitchen. I see some interesting foods on the table there, on the counter.
Yes, so, yes, we're making a butter bean soup. Butter bean, maybe new to you. It is a larger bean, really nice and creamy. I love the texture of it. We don't use it that often, and it might be because it's maybe a little harder to find. This was available in our local grocery store around here, but if you can't find butter beans, you can definitely use, they have these lima beans, these giant lima beans, which are really nice. They're actually a little bit bigger. I'll show you the difference. The butter bean is probably like twice the size of like a kidney bean, and then this like giant lima bean is probably twice the size of that. So I love the idea of these larger beans that gives you this really nice sort of meaty mouthful in this soup. So like Daniela talked about, really good plant-based protein option, but it's really nice and satiating too to have like a nice bigger bite. So we're using these butter beans. You can use any other beans that you like for this, but we're going to start off with some of our aromatics and make it pretty simple here. So we're using a shallot. You can use a onion, you can use garlic, carrots, celery, whatever you like for aromatics. I'm keeping it simple using one ingredient, one of my favorites, which is this shallot, which is this nice sort of milder onion. Has a little bit of the sweetness to it as well. And just going to cut it up into slices or rings. You can dice it up if you want. Again, I'm trying to match the bite size of this butter bean, of this larger bean. So I'm going to make everything a little bit bigger for the bites. And so I'm going to use 2 shallots. This. Again.
And shallots, Jeremy, me and my tidbits are more concentrated source of protein, fiber, micronutrients, and minerals than the actual onion. I did not know that, but I don't think we really use a large amount of it for it to be a big difference, but I thought that was a cool thing to know.
Love it. See, shallot facts.
Shallot facts.
Love it. All right, so we have these beautiful little slices of our shallot, and I'm going to put it into our pot. I have a couple tablespoons of olive oil in here. I'll show you what's going on. Gentle heat, just a medium heat. I don't want anything too aggressive. I just want to soften them a little bit. I am using 2 tablespoons of olive oil, a little bit more than I guess what you might typically need to start off a soup, but you can use less if you want. I like a little bit more olive oil in here. I think it just finishes the dish a little bit better because we're going to be adding a lot of greens to this as well. So shallots in. I like chili flakes. This is optional. Obviously, if you like a little bit of heat, you can add heat. If you don't have to. Here's where you can add any other herbs as well, if you like. If you want a little bit of dried oregano, you can add some dried oregano to that. You can add some basil, whatever you like, some garlic. And already the aroma of that olive oil, sort of softening the shallots is beautiful. And then we're gonna get to our greens. So for this, we're gonna be using some of this beautiful chard. Springtime, we're gonna start to see a lot of greens. Spinach would be fantastic. Dandelion is one you'll probably start to see more often of as well. Grew up in a lot of dandelion. You can use rapini, you know, any other greens that you like would be great with this. Just wash really well. And then again, big pieces. I'm using big leaves for this soup, okay? So once we've softened it, about a minute or two, again, I don't need to get much color on this. But once it starts to become just slightly translucent, here, again, it's hard to tilt the screen, but there you go, a little bit better. I'm gonna go ahead and add my drained and rinsed beans. Put that through, just incorporate that with the olive oil. And then nice big handful of our chard, which doesn't need much time. Like it's a very, very quick soup. The chard, you can cook it down if you want it to be even softer, but I like giving it maybe even like a couple minutes. So I'm filling it up pretty much till it hits the lip of the pot. This will reduce quite a bit as it cooks down. So about 2 cups, but again, depending on the size of the pot that you're using. Okay, and then we're gonna add our broth. Now, again, you could just add water to this. If you don't have any broth on hand, it's gonna still taste great, and just season it to taste at that point. If you have like a veg broth or chicken broth, you can add that as well. So I have some simple veg broth here. So add in about 4 cups. And that's at this point, I'm gonna put a lid on and just let it soften and wilt the chard. Like looking for my lid that fits. This will have to do. Larger. So we'll give that a couple minutes.
You're just showing us, you know, that anything goes in the kitchen and you can still make a great meal, right?
Really.
I'll add to that just because we're talking about plant proteins, and iron is one of the minerals that we talk about absorption differences between an animal protein versus a plant protein. So the butter beans, I like saying that, just the alliteration, the butter beans, they provide about 23% of our daily requirement for iron, but we're not absorbing all of that. But because it's coupled with the Swiss chard, which interestingly enough, it also has about 22% of daily value for iron in a cupful. Because the Swiss chard also has vitamin C in it, and Jeremy also pointed out the lemon. Are we adding lemon to this? Yeah, cool. So between those two, the vitamin C helps us absorb about 50% more of the iron from the butter beans. So I know I was long-winded in my explanation, but that is one of our favorite power couples, is the plant protein food that has iron and your vitamin C rich food.
Lovely. Yes. So when you were talking about it, I figured, oh, maybe we'll finish it with a little bit of lemon there as well. But I guess you have something to Swiss chard, so no worries there. Okay. Giving it a couple minutes just until it wilts, and then we're ready to finish. So I've got my bowl ready to plate. We're going to add a little bit of Parmesan cheese. This is optional. This for me is, in terms of flavor, it's a really, really nice way to bump up the flavor a little bit where you don't need a lot. Because it's a sharper cheese, a little bit goes a long way, which is really, really nice. But that's optional as well. And then just a little callback from the first recipe. If you have any of those fresh herbs, we saved some, mixed it with a little bit of olive oil. We can use this as a nice little topping for it as well. So showing how this can sort of translate into multiple dishes. And we are just about ready to go here. So once the greens are nice, wilted, then I'm ready to plate. So we can season to taste at this point. A little pinch of salt. And if your broth or stock already has a little bit of seasoning, has a little salt in it as well, then you might not need too much.
And also if you're needing to watch your sodium intake, a few things to keep in mind is that when you're buying the canned butter beans or any kind of canned good, look at the ingredient list and see if you can purchase it without salt. That should be really easy to do these days. Also, rinsing them can help a little bit. And then, like Jeremy said, the Parm cheese is optional. The addition of salt is optional. Also, the liquid you're using, you can use a low salt variety as well.
Beautiful. All right, so just spooning this into our bowl, getting some of those shallots, some of that chard, some of those butter beans. I love it too, Nelly, when you mentioned the alliteration of the butter bean. It's just a fun word. Say, or pair of words. All right. So we have beautiful bowl of our butter bean and our Swiss chard. And we'll finish it with a little bit of lemon. Just to help balance it out. And using my fingers to trap the seeds, no seeds in there. Nice little bit of parm up top. And then if you want that extra little bit of herbs from the dish before, you can put that in. But if not, with this just wonderful, comforting bowl of soup. And again, the cook time is like under 10 minutes, like really, really simple, especially if we're using those canned beans, which are really great, convenient item to have in your pantry. Drain and rinse, ready to add, and then any beautiful fresh greens that catch your eye at the farmer's market or grocery store in the spring. So there we go, our butter bean and Swiss chard soup.
Lovely. And my mind just went to when you said the farmer's market or grocery store meant to, and not your neighbor's garden, not your neighbor's grass. I love to talk about my mom and how she would clean up all the dandelion leaves in everybody else's gardens. And at the time that was not cool. But I understand it now, and I understand I was getting some awesome nutrition as a kid. Okay, enough of that memory lane.